Hi everyone, I'm Alex Mahon, and joining me today is Alex Carlos. Alex is Director of YouTube Originals, and he's come over from the States to do the session specially for us. I see people are excited. There's beer and red wine going on in the front row, so obviously people are getting prepared. Alex is going to talk to us a bit about his own career evolution, how he's ended up there, what the highs were, hopefully a bit about what the lows are and the steps in between, and then talk about the evolution of YouTube, not all of that, the evolution of YouTube and his work there, developing original content and with kind of our new breed of celebrity and YouTube stars. We'll talk a bit, which hopefully will be interesting to everyone here, about how traditional TV producers can make the most of that talent pool and the platform of YouTube. So everyone, please join me in welcoming Alex to Edinburgh. He actually went to university here, right?
Yeah,
so
that's right.
you've been here quite a lot before, but
Yeah.
maybe that was some time ago. And before we get started,
Not that long ago, but...
no, really? You're happy to be back, right? If you've got any questions during the session, you have to submit them using the app. Hopefully you've got the app, and then they come up in front of me in this screen. But before we get into all of that, let's enjoy a little bit of YouTube, and we'll start off with a clip.
Can we just watch video for a little bit?
We'll watch video in the dark room and bring in the drinks. What is that clip? Just tell us a bit about it while we get started.
So it's from a creator in France called Luc Bergeron, and it was actually pointed out to me by our European marketing team that a creator in France, a fan, had kind of produced this kind of love letter to video and to YouTube to celebrate our 10th anniversary. And it's better than, I mean, with all respect to our marketing folk, it's better than any sizzle I've ever seen. So it plays long, and there's a few non-PC bits in there I hope you forgive me for.
And you use that to promote 10 years of YouTube. That's what you use as your marketing video, right?
Well, that's what we chose to use today.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be fun.
It's fun. You've been at, let me get this right, you've been at Warner Brothers, Paramount Pictures, Electronic Arts, Disney, and YouTube. So really at the center of kind of a wave of revolutions in media and entertainment. How did you get started? Like, how did you sort of start off in that group of companies?
Well, middle-class, Middle England kid, reading books and playing sports, and I, like a lot of kids in England, decided to come to Scotland to study. So I came to Edinburgh for my degree, and had a brilliant time here, and worked in Bennett's Bar in Toll Cross. I don't know if any of you guys were there last night. Famous whiskey bar. I was fired for being a Sassenach bastard. And then I stumbled into the entertainment industry through Disney, who were figuring out how to unlock the vaults, unlock the animated features, release them on VHS, and create the cash cow that was home entertainment for so long. So that was my entry into that world. It was kind of entertainment meets packaged goods, and I was just a young marketer looking for a shot. And it kind of went from there. I just found reasons to say yes to opportunities that came along. Helped Disney build an owned and operated subsidiary in Australia, and was a junior marketing guy there. Met my wife, who was my boss, fell in love, moved to LA.
You get fired for that? No.
Yeah, you get fired for that. You're not allowed to tell them about that. At the time, you weren't allowed to, have a moustache either, so it was all a bit strange. And then we moved to the States, and Warner Brothers hired me as their director of family entertainment marketing, and then gave me the sell-through marketing business to run, which was all about helping people create these movie collections that 10, 15 years later they would be looking at going, why did I do that? So that was fun. EA, Electronic Arts, were at the time looking to find somebody who could kind of sell video game hits or make hits and sell them at scale in the new big box retail that video games were pervading. So I joined EA, and I found myself drawn to the kind of new bits within EA, the emergence of the internet at the time, and we're kind of in the 96, 97, allowed for these gaming experiences that were kind of extraordinary, the emergence of MMORPGs in the virtual world. So I looked after Ultima Online, as the business guy that rolled out that was the precursor to Worlds of Warcraft. Did you ask me all this, or am I just rambling?
No, I was just thinking of how to get a question in.
Should I just stop rambling?
Yeah, stop rambling.
Okay, stop rambling.
And you went to...
We've hit the 2000s,
Okay,
by the way.
so we're in the home video. Yeah, I was just thinking, are we still in the home video yet? So you did that, and then you switched at some point to YouTube, right? So YouTube's been 5 years. I'm just...
So we're skipping a decade.
I'm worried about that.
Okay. Well, I'll just
what made the switch to YouTube, and what attracted you in there? Because 5 years ago, okay, so that's the YouTube at 10, right? So 5 years ago was a huge time ago in the history of YouTube. So what made you make that switch?
I'd been working in the studio business for that prior decade. Finishing off at Paramount, I helped set up a digital distribution business for them, and was working on development of kind of straight to the internet shows. My favorite being the Legion of Extraordinary Dancers from John Chu, but also Jackass 2.5. And I was sort of felt steeped in this new culture of kind of internet consumption, and coupled with a new form of storytelling. And Robert Kinsell, who's now the chief business officer at YouTube, at the time had just joined YouTube and was looking for help in how to demystify Google and YouTube to Hollywood, and perhaps Hollywood to Google and YouTube. So I kind of came on board with an open remit to act as that kind of translator, and I've worn a few hats since.
And is there a massive amount of translation? I mean, how does being in a creative team in somewhere like YouTube and being the person responsible for making those creative choices, or working with creative producers to make those choices, how difficult or how different is that to the previous kind of companies?
Yeah. Well, I think today there's a huge amount more knowledge around what YouTube is and what it can be as a part of your business than perhaps there was in 2011. Whether that's the deployment of our content copyright management tools, or how to build a fan base on a crazy next generation platform. So I think that fundamentally the narrative has changed and it's now much more sophisticated. But I think any type of partnership requires understanding what your partner is looking for and understanding their business and their goals. And YouTube has this malleability, and it can really, it can serve a lot of different purposes and be incredibly beneficial if you know what you're trying to accomplish.
But do you find that, like, traditional TV producers want to come and work with YouTube but don't quite know how to interact? Do you have to sort of spend a lot of time?
Well, I think that used to be
explaining to them, or has that changed?
I think that used to be the case. I think it has changed. I am sure everyone in this room recognized video in that trailer, in that tribute piece, which shows that everyone watches YouTube. But
not everyone makes for it, right?
No, I know, but I think that there's a value in actually consuming and being connected to a platform that that is now infused in part of your business. So I think foundationally, if you use something, it really helps you understand the dynamics. And then I think you start to see lighthouse examples of how others have started to deploy it, and you have those aha moments. Carpool karaoke wouldn't be the success that it was if it weren't for Fallon and Kimmel and Conan, who have been building these tribes and these breakout formats inside their late night variety. It's almost like the shows are modeled for the water cooler now. And that allowed us to lean into, help John Oliver and his fantastic show identify the need for a single subject that could be posted into our world and create that, virality and that conversation that can then lead people back to the full broadcast show. So I think people see these kind of lighthouses, and it helps them identify with how they can deploy it.
Okay, so as part of that evolution, as I see it, there's been the launch of YouTube Red, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and YouTube Originals.
Yeah.
you launched YouTube Red in the US, Australia, New Zealand, and just last week in Mexico. And then you've begun commissioning original content for it, so higher funded original content. So we'll see some clips of this later. So shows like Scare Pewdiepie, A Trip to Unicorn Island, and yesterday I think you announced Fight of the Living Dead, with more of them, maybe 20 more planned for next year. So why don't we start off by talking, for the audience here, a bit about what is YouTube Red? What is that as a proposition? Because it's not available here yet, so people haven't had a chance to look at it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, fundamentally, YouTube Red and the reason, I'll tell you what it is and then maybe the why, the what and the why. So YouTube Red is, to all intents and purposes, the kind of ultimate experience of YouTube. It couples a feature set with a music service, with shows, be they series or movies, that YouTube fans will love. So the features are really cool. First of all, it's a kind of interruption-free version of YouTube, ads-free, if you will. And that's fantastic for if you're throwing a party and you have a music playlist, maybe you don't want commercial interruptions. So that's an interesting use case. It's the ability to save videos offline. So you can tag videos that you want to watch when you don't have an internet connection. They can be cached onto your device and then played back on your device. You're on a plane, you're on a train, you're in a subway. It's a fantastic opportunity to continue that YouTube experience. And then the third is background play. So for a lot of people in the who are sort of mobile super users, shall we call them, they want to use other apps. They want to respond to an email, respond to a text. In most of today's world, the app that they were using will switch off to allow them to use the app that they want to use. YouTube Red allows them to continue to listen to YouTube, for example, like radio, as they do other things.
So if I had
it's
it,
a multitasking
I would
device.
be getting rid of skip this ad in 3, which is what I'm looking at, skip.
Yeah.
Right, I would be getting rid of that. Obviously not paying any attention to the ad, just waiting to skip. And then I would...
skip in 5, actually, but let's not quibble.
Don't pay attention for the first 2 seconds. And then I would get, like on the iPlayer, I could make it small on my screen so I could do something else, that, for example. And then if I wanted to, I'd have the music service as well. And that's $9.99 a month, is it $9.99?
Yeah, it's $9.99 a month. So included in that proposition is a full-on music service, which is incredibly amazing. And there's an app dedicated to the music service, our YouTube Kids app that's rolled out in many countries around the world, and it's doing really, really well. That's also tethered into YouTube Red, so you can consume it both in an AVOD world as well as an SVOD world. And then on top of that, we have this corpus of shows, which we call YouTube Originals, that are intended to kind of lean into what we believe YouTube fans will love. Many of the shows star YouTube creators or come from YouTube channels, but they're very up-leveled. They have to be. They have to differentiate themselves from the AVOD content that lives in the core channel. They have to feel unique. They have to feel special, but they still have to be feel like they're connected to the brand that they come from. And so in order to create that differentiation and that specialness, what we try to do is pair these creators with the best-in-class storytellers, the proven programmers represented in rooms like this, where there's really experienced showrunners, there's fantastic source material, great IP. And the pairing of those two things in success creates an original.
So in those YouTube originals, there have been, am I right in saying around 8 or 10 of them so far?
12 now.
Okay, 12, thank you. You take a piece of well-known YouTube talent, so Pewdiepie, Lily Singh, and then you're with the right script and the right partner, putting them into a big piece of content, kind of millions of dollars budget type piece of content. I mean, I watched Unicorn Island, so that's like a full 2-hour movie about Lily Singh's tour and her clips and her evolution. So that's the sort of first slate of them. So to start off with, I guess, in that premium original content, you're starting with the biggest YouTube stars, right, and putting them in bigger vehicles. Has that been the rationale?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a path, and it's a fairly straight line path. I think, you know, you look at scale and you judge it appropriately, but you also look at, you know, ambition. Who's the creator that's always wanted to realize some ambition and never had the chance, and be able to give them that opportunity on the platform where their fans live. I think there's also some incredible talent who don't necessarily have that scale, but every time they make something, it's amazing and beautiful. So how can you bring that to the fore and celebrate it? There's actually a slide that's useful.
There's a slide with some of these titles.
It's a terrific slide.
Yeah, well, let's get the terrific slide. This is the terrific slide. Tell us a bit about this, and then maybe we'll just watch a clip. We've got a clip coming up, and then we can sort of talk about how it goes commissioning those.
Yeah, so here you see a grid of 9 of the 12 shows that we've launched. And some of these are scripted, some of these are unscripted, some of them are movies, most of them are series. So Unicorn Island stars Lily Singh, who's this terrific Indian-Canadian who embarked on an incredibly ambitious world tour. You know, fans are spread around the world. And Judy McGrath's production company, Astronauts Wanted, created a wonderful follow doc, and it was called A Trip to Unicorn Island. Laser Team was 50% crowdfunded by Rooster Teeth fans. Rooster Teeth is this massive gaming brand on YouTube, tens of millions of subscribers. And Laser Team is a sci-fi comedy, maybe Ghostbusters style, a group of 4 unlikely kind of heroes who save the world, another movie. And then you move into unscripted shows like Scare Pewdiepie and Escape the Night. I won't go through all of these, I'll just do a few. Scare Pewdiepie features Felix Kleiberg, Swede based in Brighton, known as Pewdiepie, biggest Cume subscriber base on YouTube. And he partnered through Maker Studios with Skybound, who are prolific storytellers on television, producers of The Walking Dead. And together they came to create a 10-episode unscripted series called Scare Pewdiepie. It keeps Felix in his brand of kind of comedic reactions to scary situations, but it just turns it up a number of notches. And we're very happy to have announced the renewal of that one for a 2nd season.
And so should we'll just watch some clips of them maybe, if you can line that up, and then let's talk a bit about how they get commissioned.
Sure. Yay.
You've got a clap.
The marketing sizzle gets a clap.
Marketing sizzle's quite good.
I will share that good news.
So I've spent a few hours watching some of this content, which is not available here yet, so I had to get a link to do it. So what was interesting to me is you've taken the fan base, you've taken the people who've got an amazing fan base, and they're in much higher caliber content, right? Because you're going from pieces where a lot of people are kind of vlogging, and that's the next level of where they can be with your pairing of people with more traditional production expertise, one could say. And it's very, very high quality in terms of how it's done. What's that kind of costing? And is this the sort of first step on a journey to bigger and bigger commissioning budgets?
Yeah, well, the development production budgets vary according to the show. So I'll give you that generic answer. I think that the best proxy for us in any given market is cable budgets.
Yep.
Our orders can range from 6-episode kind of limited series up to 10. We've been more comfortable in commercial half hours on the series side. You can see we've made some bets in features, and those budgets are more like independent budgets. So that's where we are. It's very much first inning. Yeah, as you said, YouTube Red has launched in the US and in Australia, New Zealand, and Mexico. But whilst we're waiting for YouTube Red to launch in markets like the UK, or rather until it launches, we're not going to disintermediate a UK fan, for example, from Scare Pewdiepie, because there's a lot of people in the UK who love Scare Pewdiepie. So we make that synchronously available for EST via Google Play at the same time it's available everywhere else for YouTube Red. I think we start off when we think about it. We start off with how can we build a portfolio of shows that we think reflect the ideals and values of YouTube. You know, how can we make shows that are fun, that are relevant, that are bold, that are optimistic, that are global? YouTube values, I think that fundamentally. The second is we think about our audience. And if you think about it through the sort of demographics, we're looking at, 18 to 34. Fans of YouTube who also have a willingness to pay. But within that audience, you start to then think about psychographics, behaviors and attitudes. And, I think about game bros who've kind of grown up in a sort of escapist video culture, who love superheroes, maybe frat boy comedy and some EDM. And you try to sort of serve that profile with a slate that would really excite them. And then you think about fangirls who, whose attachment to their idol is incredibly significant. They're their best friends. And so you try to take them on a journey that maybe is much more personal, or you create stories that that they'll care about, maybe coming of age stories. So that's the first thing we do when we think about it from a slate perspective. And then you start to look at, YouTube and understand where the weight of emphasis lies for those different tribes. And you start to look at the creators and understand, who wants to do this, who has this idea that they've been, really excited about for so long but haven't had that chance. Or we tap production companies and programmers on the shoulder, and we describe what we're looking for, and we start to sort of meld these relationships together. But at the end of the day, once we find something that's great, it's much more hands-off. And if you compare this, these YouTube endemic creators with experience, then you can have the confidence to, allow them to just make good stuff.
Do you think that's what will happen? I mean, how much of a plan is there up front? I'm not saying there isn't a plan, but do you go, right, we'll start with this, there are loads of boys who are game fans, so we'll start with PewDiePie, that's kind of obvious, he's the biggest talent there. We'll take Lily Singh because there's lots of girls who are very focused on her as their connection, and then we'll evolve from there, and we'll check the data, and we'll see what works, and this year it'll be 10, and next year it'll be 20, and the year after it'll be 100. Is it more organic? Is it an experiment? When the funded channels happened in kind of 2013, there was 100 or 200 million that got spent on that, and presumably that experiment helped inform some of what you've done now. How organic is it?
Well, I don't think it's by the numbers. I don't think you make decisions simply through quantitative data. I think you can take some incredible insight from the analytics that live on platforms like YouTube and apply it to development and storytelling, and it is incredibly useful. But the great art of storytelling will remain. I think you take a variety of approaches. So in the case of Foursome, for example, which stars Gen X Penn, that's a scripted series, that came from Awesomeness TV. It came from Brian Robbins' team, but it starred YouTube talent, and it was perfect for that fangirl audience.
And what's different about this round that's different from the 2011 thing, the funded channels? Is it a different set of content? Is it, because that didn't totally work?
It's very different. There's a lot of lessons that you learn from any program, and that's the exciting thing about YouTube. You just keep testing and iterating. I think for the funded channels, it was a moment in time where, and it was the first hat I wore at YouTube. We were looking to tell the story of the channelization of the platform. YouTube had decided to re-architect the platform fundamentally around channels. Before that, as a consumer, you'd come into YouTube to see a single video, you'd end up on this magical mystery tour for an hour, and you wouldn't have known how you ended up there. The channels gave YouTube a structure that helped users find content they loved, advertisers know what content they could identify with, it helped creators build businesses. And the funded channels were a way for us to help prove our investment in this and conviction in this new structure. and we invested across the content community. Television networks, production companies, sports leagues, news publishers, new media companies, endemics.
Yeah, we could get it. We took it.
And many.
But the traditional stuff didn't really work, right? The stuff from traditional TV producers didn't work, but the awesomenesses and the machinimas and the makers did work.
Yeah.
That was what's interesting to me, is that traditional people didn't necessarily have the skills.
Well, I think they had the skills, they just didn't necessarily know exactly how to apply them. But it helped us understand what our narrative was. It helped us understand that, there's a definition of quality out there amongst millennials, which is much more about authenticity than it is about, shiny floor.
Although this is more shiny floor. No, or is this elevating what the people they?
I think that's the goal here. So the goal is a fan looks at one of these shows and goes, "I can't believe this is on YouTube," but of course it's on YouTube. Yeah, so okay. That's our bullseye.
And is that to become the Netflix or the Amazon Prime kind of scale in terms of? We hope that
YouTube fans fall in love with this service. It's designed for them. It's very much of YouTube. I think that just to kind of go back to the funded channels to finish that thought, when you kind of build a cohort like that, you learn so many lessons from what works and what doesn't. And I think it really helped us lean into the endemic creator base that is native to YouTube. It helped give us conviction in our narrative, in our millennial-focused audience.
And what didn't work?
And what didn't work? I think it's challenging to find an audience that isn't there. Even if advertisers want a particular demographic at scale, if they're not fundamentally there, they're not there. I think it's difficult to create shows that can work, that are designed to be one-way, lean-back experiences on a platform that's designed for audience engagement and sharing and liking, and where discoverability and the marketing of the show is as important as the show itself. But Awesomeness and Vice and WWE, and there's a lot of Jamie Oliver over here. There's a lot of partners who, 80% of the shows are still uploading, of the channels are still uploading actively. 70 or 80 are in the top 1%. They're churning out 1 billion views monthly, that cohort. And there's 30 with over 1 million subs.
Some of it worked.
So some of it worked.
So if I came on, right, so I'm a content producer, if I want to get some of your money, I come to you and I say, I have this idea for the Alex and Alex show.
What's the path?
And how do I do that? What's the path? And how do I make money? So I get paid to do it. Do I still make my 55-45 advertising split? Does that go away?
It's actually a different business. So to answer that question, it's not associated with the standard revenue share model.
Because there's no ads. So
I think the direct answer is that many people in this room will have relationships with YouTube through our partnerships team. So the first thing to do is to have a conversation through that robust network. In the UK, it's run by Richard Lewis and his team.
He's at the back of the room.
Richard's the man boy somewhere in this room. So that would be the first path. I think that another would be to find our development exec in London. His name is Jake Chudnow. He is discoverable. But another way is just to start to have a think about this new opportunity. This is an opportunity, I think, that is designed for people in this room. We are lucky as Brits that English is the lingua franca of the world. It makes our content export beautifully. 50% of many of our creators' audiences live in the US. We're excited. The US community is as excited for Dan and Phil's show as anyone. So I think that you kind of harness that legacy of great storytelling that exists throughout the UK with the knowledge that English language travels and think through those kind of creators and those formats and ideas and auspice that can be coupled with YouTube creators and channels and
And does
And
it
if
have
that's
to be
appealing,
something...
then that's how the conversation
Does it have to be
starts.
something that's got a YouTube following already? So at this stage, you're looking at stuff that's got a YouTube creator. Presumably you need some data. So you're going to go off and say, well, how many people already follow this piece of talent? Why would this work for us? You're not looking for non-YouTube talent ideas, are you?
Well, fundamentally, any original, be it in year 1 or year 5, has to feel like it sort of sits in this YouTube world really smartly. I think increasingly over time, you know, that we'll start to place bets in, you know, on shows that maybe are a little less creator-driven, but will still feel of YouTube. We have a show that we announced in the summer that's in pre-production right now with Lionsgate's Television called Step Up, which is an episodic kind of reimagining of the film franchise. It's EP'd by Channing Tatum and Jenna Tatum and Adam Shankman. And that will couple, you know, some amazing kind of YouTube famous talent and dancers with, you know, some millennial appealing talent that isn't necessarily, you know, of YouTube. I think you'll start to see us kind of fuse those bets together.
Do you think you'll get to the point, or can you foresee that you'll get to the point where, like Netflix, because, you know, when Netflix started, there wasn't so much content on it, but that and they spent 10 million, then 100 million, and now it's 5 billion a year. Do you think you'll get to the point where you're doing that level of content, where you want a House of Cards style high-end scripted show? Do you see that this is like a step in the evolution and that might become the future?
I think we have, you know, really great ambitions for YouTube Red. We think it's a fantastic addition to our platform in every respect. I think we just take every year as it comes. This just feels like a really smart starting point. But where we want to be in, you know, 3 years' time, 5 years' time, what kind of shows you'll see emerge is just impossible to tell. Right now, you know, this feels like a really, I mean, we've got 21 shows that we've announced, 12 that we've launched. You'll start to see local language shows in Japan and Korea, in France and Germany, Spanish language. And so I've been on a plane quite a bit this year.
When people watch the shows, what do you see in terms of the consumption pattern? Do they watch the show and watch it again? Do you sort of see the more minutes people spend in YouTube that sort of goes exponentially up once you're kind of committed to YouTube Red? I know it must be small numbers already, or I know you don't release the numbers, but estimates are it's a couple million people paying the $9.99 a month. So, and it's early days, right? So I know you won't give me a number. What do you see? What do you see in terms of those consumption patterns?
No reaction other than it's great that people are guesstimating already. Yeah. You know, I think we look at the shows and the efficacy through a few different lenses. First of all, if it's a series, the first episode of every series will be available to everyone on YouTube. It gives the fans something to enjoy, and it gives us the opportunity to hopefully persuade them into YouTube Red to watch the rest of the series. And you know, those shows, those episodes are you know, incredibly well viewed. You look at them as a percentage of actively engaged subscribers and all sorts of other metrics. You look at their, you know, the social buzz around them, the engagement analytics from sharing to liking. And then once the shows are inside of YouTube Red for episode 2 through 10, illustratively, you look at the time spent on the show. For an active YouTube Red subscriber, how much time are they spending? And I think that time spent, even inside a paid subscription service, is still that critical metric, because it determines everything.
Share that with the producers, so the guys at...
yeah, it's their analytics.
The guys at Tastemade told me once that they found that when you guys shared that data, that in all their videos of people making a recipe, and then at the end, when they eat the recipe and they taste the recipe, they see that, like, as soon as they lift the spoon, people log out. So they just stopped people tasting. It's just like pointless. No one's interested in watching it.
Well,
apart from Greg Wallace, no one's interested in that. So do you sort of share that data so people can see and evolve what they do?
Yeah. Well, hopefully they eat the food as well as the recipe. But I think you can use the analytics however you choose. But I do think that anyone who's creating content and story on YouTube And movie studios do this all the time, by the way. They release trailers, and they really look at the dropout rates. They look at what resonates and what doesn't, and then they cut a new trailer. And I think if YouTube is your business, then you use the learnings that live inside our platform, and those are the great tools that you have at your disposal. There's a lot of vloggers who started out creating weekly vlogs. They were 2 to 3 minutes each. Now you see those same, and they were single creators with, they were producer, director, editors. And now they've kind of reached a scale where they're creating daily vlogs, and they're 15 minutes each. And it's a small point, but it's a way to sort of demonstrate. And they have, they've moved from one-person teams to three-person teams to achieve that, because they recognize that daily consumption habits are what their fans are looking for.
And what's interesting is the fans want a schedule, which is strangely linear. I mean, I'm not saying it's going back to linear TV, it's like oddly linear television type behavior.
With a brand, you want to bring that expectation, but we've now moved to a world where our average user sessions on mobile are over 40 minutes. They're over 40 minutes. So you want to, as a content creator, try to lean into those kinds of insights.
Okay, so I'm going to take some questions. The best question that's on the iPad is Alex Carlos like a nice version of Shane Smith? Which I just have to read that out, because that could mean, are you like a psychotropic megalomaniac without the swearing, or it could be a compliment, so I don't suggest we go any further with that question. I don't know what to do with it, but it's quite funny.
Great.
One of these questions, I think, how do content makers make money from YouTube? I think we've sort of covered that, right? There's a commissioning model. That's how it works. If I was a producer, I would I'll come to you. If I got the money, I'd make my fee.
Yeah. I guess in kind of traditional vernacular, it's a cost-plus model. So there's the production fee, and then there's a producer fee on top, and then we have subsequent cycle options. But YouTube Red will window the show for a period of time, and then allow for ancillary revenues and distribution means after certain blocks of time. And that ancillary revenue is split 50-50 between YouTube and the partner, which we think is a great way for the partner to realize additional value that maybe they don't through other through other arrangements. Okay. So that's kind of roughly what it is. But we hope it's fair, and we hope it's it gives them purpose and conviction.
There's a question here that says, why do we need YouTube? Which is a bit harsh. But I think the question underneath it says, there's a sort of question here about what's the change in media consumption patterns if you sort of look at things from a linear TV perspective. We all know that in the sort of sub-25 demo, people are watching more and more on any screen. It's not a living room question, it's not a linear question, and YouTube is available on all screens. So do you see that kind of, in your mind, do you think there's just going to be a cutoff? So like people will never go to the BBC or ITV, regardless of where that is delivered, because they're not brands they recognize, and YouTube becomes that kind of brand that they recognize for content. What do you see in the sort of shifting patterns of demographic behavior of where those loyalties lie?
Well, I think that BBC and ITV are brands that this audience recognizes. I mean, if you consider us a technology platform with a valuable brand associated with it, it's really the partners that sit on top of that platform that have the opportunity to build their audiences, and they can be from the world of television. They can, some of our biggest partners are giant broadcasters like BBC, ITV, Fremantle,
But what do you see from the viewer's perspective? Do you see that users or consumers are stopping going to those brands because their time is on YouTube?
No,
do you think there will be a fundamental generational change?
I disconnect living room and hardware from the TV brands that are now realizing where the consumption patterns are going, and they're leaning into partnerships like ours, and they're doing it in a really smart way. The challenge is that they have to think about the nuances of the various platforms that they engage with. Snapchat's very different to Facebook's very different to YouTube. But BBC, ITV, Vice, Awesomeness, Casey Neistat, Tyler Oakley, Bethany Motor, they can all coexist in this new world order.
But people need something that gives them the discoverability. You know, if I go onto YouTube Red, do I see those all as different channels, or do I just see this is what YouTube Red is recommending to me?
I think the channel architecture is designed to allow you to find a channel, fall in love with it, subscribe to it, and then it becomes part of your persistent channel guide. The algorithm allows us to surface video that we think you'll fall in love with, and if you do, then that's another path to your subscription. I think you've got like a lot of different ways in. You just have to understand the playbook as to what works and what doesn't. My sense, I've got an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old, which does actually make me very old. And I do remember the first time we were in a kind of on holiday in a hotel room. I do remember my son touching the TV screen, trying to operate it like a giant iPad. I do remember that moment clearly. And I think about how my living room is on an every night basis, and it's kind of empty. Now, that doesn't mean that there is no living room anymore or there's no TV consumption, but it does mean that it happens in different ways. And there's a lot of personal choice that comes with video consumption. And it's why on-demand is so critical, and it's why device ubiquity is so critical. There's a lot of things that come with it. So that I kind of decouple the two things.
If I, just because this is a question on here, if I was on YouTube Red, am I just going to see all the original shows in one channel, or how does that?
That's a good question.
Does the interface kind of work?
It's
what
actually,
do I see when I go in?
yeah, it's exactly the same experience that you know of as YouTube. It just unlocks features. So you know, it unlocks the ability to tag offline or enjoy in background.
But it would be promoted in my feed.
Or see episodes 2 through 10 of Scare PewDiePie on PewDiePie's channel. The answer is the shows are most easily discoverable on the channels that the creators are a part of. That would be their primary home. There'll be other means of discovery. There'll be promotion and lots of other things. But think of YouTube Red as simply a fantastic version of the YouTube you already know. Okay.
So like it's the same interface, but you can do more on it effectively, and it's within that YouTube Red wrapper, if that makes sense. Is the ultimate aim to reach a set of subscriber numbers for YouTube Red? Even though you're not going to tell me what they are, but is the aim to get to a certain number? Is the aim to have people more time on the platform? What's the target?
I think in success, and I'll try to give you a soft answer versus a numerical one, which I wouldn't be able to give you. But this is it's a considerable bet, and so we have, at Google and YouTube, considerable ambition. But ultimately, this is about providing choice to fans around the world. This gives them the ability to enjoy shows that would not have been possible without this program. It gives them a music experience that otherwise wouldn't have been possible on YouTube. So there's a lot of consumer choice that we think about. I think from a creator lens, it creates a secondary revenue stream. And with a secondary revenue stream, more things can happen.
So it's about money. But that's about the subscriber getting the subscriptions money and kind of creating a new revenue stream.
I think when you can provide a secondary revenue stream to our core advertising business, it's a great thing. It's a great opportunity.
That makes sense. I've done these questions. Are there any questions from the audience? That's what I meant to do next, it says here. I think we've got a mic. So, yes, you, sir. Hold on, mic's coming. Mic's coming.
You do have a physical studio?
YouTube studios.
Yeah, we call them the spaces.
And where are they?
We have one actually just launched in King's Cross last week. It's a really beautiful studio. It has a couple of sound stages.
How many square feet?
Wow.
Ooh, it's quite big.
I
Isn't
don't
it
know
like
the answer to
10,000
that.
square foot? It was on the launch party.
I'm guessing
invite.
22,000.
I didn't go, but it was on. It's massive. 20,000. And they've got one in Paris. There's one in LA. Right? There's a few.
There's a big one in LA. There's one in Paris, Berlin, Mumbai, Tokyo. Yeah, they're really cool spaces. They're basically ways for us to provide equipment and facility to creators who haven't necessarily had access to that, teach them how to use it, bring them into workshops, have people connect and collaborate. It's really
free
cool.
Snacks? Are there
we
free
have
snacks?
we have jump cams for VR. We have VR rigs and Phantom HD cameras, which are ultra slow-mo, if you like ultra slow-mo. That's kind of, and you have to have 10,000 subscribers, I think, as a minimum to apply to use it. But really excited about the King's Cross space.
Thank you. You're right at the back there, in the very dark reaches.
Hello. Given the sort of daily demand that you were talking about, how do you manage talent burnout? I mean, there was sort of quite notably Zoe Suggs and, not Zoe Suggs, Zoella and Alfie Suggs came off about 6-7 months ago, I think, which certainly caused trouble for me. But I was wondering how you actually, are these series a way of managing them having to commit to uploading every day?
I don't think they're directly I don't think they're directly attributed to that, but I think it's really important for any creator to have a balanced life. You know, there's an intensity that comes with that kind of content creation and direct relationship, and I think it's really important for all of us to understand that and to help them understand how to build businesses. So, you know, this is not a unique idea. You know, this is an entrepreneurial problem. What's that point in which you add one and then add two, and you start to build a small little team that can mitigate some of those challenges? How do you kind of collapse 7 days of material into a couple of days so that you're not having to kind of emotionally think about it? And I think there's some disciplines that you can take from the everyday challenges of television and apply to this, you know, much more nuanced world that had maybe been experienced before. But we're very aware of that.
Just as a sort of supplementary question, do you think if there is a cease in uploading or a pause or a hiatus, do you think talent will survive that, or does it? I mean, I was just looking at Zoella's Google Trends, and you can see that, you know, she's been in decline in terms of search for the last, you know, 6-7 months, and I was just wondering if you know, is it a fad, or sorry, is the talent sort of faddish, or can it sustain throughout?
Do you mean sort of does talent on YouTube by necessity have a shorter shelf life when they're off air than they do in television or film? Because you would say in other media, those careers go on and on. They just have process of evolution. What do you think?
It's horses for courses, quite honestly. There'll be certain types of creator who are going to, you know, be more successful if they do things on a daily basis. But there are others who are trying to create masterpieces, and you can't do that once a day. You can maybe do it once a month or once a quarter. So, you know, Devon Supertramp, I don't know if he's familiar to this crowd, but
not to me.
He makes really beautiful videos, and they're
on YouTube.
They're sort of outdoor, kind of bungeeing through, you know, the Utah rocks, and bad description, but they take a bit of time to create. So I think you kind of have to, you know, look at each one on a case-by-case basis.
Thanks.
But it's part of the, you know, these guys are now entrepreneurs, and they have to manage their creative and commercial enterprises as such. I mean, they're multi-hyphenates, and they're some of the most extraordinary talent I've come across. You know, they're better marketers. As somebody who was in marketing for a little bit of time, you know, they're some of the best marketers I've ever seen, let alone storytellers.
I've got time for one more question at that side at the back. Sorry. If it's quick, we might be able to squeeze it in before I get in trouble. Yes, go on.
I'm just wondering about how, will the YouTube red and the drive towards longer content on YouTube, do you not think that will hurt the creativity that has so far come out of YouTube? I'm thinking specifically of how the change in algorithm decimated the animators about 5-6 years ago, which, like Egoraptor, who was the biggest animator on YouTube, completely just changed course and became a Let's Play channel because he had to.
I think you've got, I mean, the animation category on YouTube's incredibly robust. So there's, you know, there's probably some specific use cases, but you know, I think you kind of are going to see, you've got a growth platform, you've got all these different categories that are, have very, very distinct dynamics. But I'm seeing as much creativity today as I've ever seen. And if you think about the technology tools that we're providing, be that for, the quality that comes with 4K or 8K, or, mobile live stream, or the emergence of VR and the cardboard component. I mean, there's just an awful lot of foundation to tell story with, and we're super excited about that, and we don't see any kind of creativity being capped anytime soon.
Okay, perhaps you can come and ask your question at the end, because we're out of time, I'm being told. So thank you very much, Alex. That's pretty much everything. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
I have to say, I have to read this. It just remains for me to thank our sponsors, British Film Commission, Creative Scotland, YouTube, and of course you. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. I hope you found it interesting.
Thank you.